I'd sell her if I got a good offer.
Hello and welcome to episode 11 of the First4LCFC Podcast. Once again, my name is Jamie Thorpe and I'm delighted to be joined by the other two First4LCFC admins, Christian Mosen and Ashby Delazouche native, Edward Noon.
Hello.
How are you both? You all right?
All good.
Yes,
all
thank
good.
you.
Ready and raring to go.
Excellent. Normally on this podcast, we review the big Leicester City talking points from the past week. But as we are just coming out of the fun vacuum that is the international break, we are instead going to focus on the impending January transfer window, looking at the likely ins and outs at the King Power Stadium. But before we get on to that, we do, of course, need to mention England, who secure qualification for next year's Euros with 2 wins against Montenegro and Kosovo, meaning, of course, that they play at Wembley too, which is great. Leicester had 2 representatives in Ben Chilwell and the debutant James Maddison, but it's the former that's taken the headlines with a blockbuster performance in the 7-0 win against Montenegro, registering a hat-trick of assists in just 25 minutes. Ed, what did you make of Chilwell in the game, in what you saw of the game, and do you think that he's made that left-back spot? That's definitely his own now, isn't it?
Yeah, he's just been really impressive at both international and club level, and to be honest, other players at left back just aren't really standing out to me on the international scene. So sort of he had that window opportunity and he's really taken it now. And the England team, whilst we've got some great wingers, with fullbacks like Trent Alexander-Arnold and Ben Chilwell, I think that's such a good attacking option. So could be exciting stuff in the Euros next summer on that front.
Yeah, definitely. Maddison made his debut, but then withdrew from the squad against Kosovo through injury, if the stories are to be believed. But Chris, it doesn't really seem like the manager favours him. I mean, is he destined to become another Letizia, one that just is inexplicably looked over by the England manager?
I mean, that's a very interesting comparison. One I've not heard yet, but I can see the similarities now that you've put it to me. Ultimately, I think it's probably the sensible thing is to say it's too soon to say that, isn't it, really? I mean, the next 2 fixtures are in March, aren't they? And they're going to be supposedly competitive friendlies leading into the tournament. And I think that's typically and historically a clear indicator on the style of play, the shape the manager wants to play, and ultimately the players he's going to be looking at. All Maddison can do in the meantime is keep playing the way he is. The worst thing that could happen out of this is that it starts to get in his head, like, what's he doing? Like, what more could he be doing? It sort of changes his game for Leicester, I guess. But yeah, in answer to your question, I think it's too soon to judge him on whether he's going to be a next Letizia in terms of constantly overlooked. I think he just needs to keep doing what he's doing, and hopefully by March time, or ultimately by the summer, it's enough to get that start in place.
Because looking at the system that England play, Ed, with the 3 in the middle against Kosovo, it was Winks ahead of Rice with Oxlade-Chamberlain. I mean, Maddison's improvement in that number 8 role for Leicester this year has been brilliant. So you'd have thought he was tailor-made for that system. But like Chris said, do you think that it will sow the seed and make him think, well, I've got to move to one of the so-called bigger clubs in order to get in the England side?
I think if we keep up what we're doing and Maddison keeps up what he's doing, by the time those friendlies come round, Southgate will have no choice but to pick him. I think perhaps rightly or wrongly, it's probably easier to, whilst we who see him every game and big Leicester fans will say he should deserve his place now, it's probably easier for Southgate to not pick him now after 10, 11, 12 games, whatever it's been. But by this nearly next summer, when we'll have 30 league games, if we're still in and around where we are and he's consistently performed at this level, I think it will become near impossible for him not to pick him. So he just needs to keep it up and not let it get to him, really.
I mean, it benefits us, doesn't it? If hopefully he takes it as a positive and says, right, I want to make that place my own, I'm going to keep it going. I mean, elsewhere, Leicester had a lot of internationals in play. Ndidi playing in the AFCON. Luke Thomas bringing in the 19s. James Justin in the 21s. We've got a strong international cohort out there at the moment. Shows the depth of the club. The news come out tonight as well about Johnny Evans being put into quarantine, which makes it sound like we're having some sort of Leicester-based version of The Walking Dead. But I mean, Chris, this is probably something about nothing, isn't it? This is Sky Sports just looking for any reason to have a chat about Leicester, surely.
Oh, well, in my opinion, absolutely. Obviously, I hope he's all right. But in what I said to you in the group chat as soon as it was posted by Ed, I think is that, one, it's classic Sky Sports, and two, it's realistically a cold and it's protecting, the rest of the Northern Irish players. I think it's just general protocol.
I mean, I know it's been a slow news week, but that is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's the day and age we live in, isn't it? I mean, they're going to make a story out of everything, aren't they? So, yeah, I won't say anything to worry about, hopefully, touch wood.
Man has cold, headline news. Right, so obviously, one of the other sides of Chilwell's performance, which we're going to neatly link into talking about the transfer window, is that the better he gets, the more attention is drawn to him. Is that something that you're worried about, Chris, that as he continues to play well and establish himself, that the bigger clubs are going to increase their interest in him?
Well, I think there's two ways to look at it. If we finish ultimately with Champions League qualification, Chilwell has to have a serious think about it. Like, ultimately, leaving right at that point, what is he gaining in the short term? The obvious argument is bigger club, etc. Well, it depends who comes in for him. I think Chelsea are probably going to be sort of market favourites, maybe. But ultimately, if he stays at Leicester, he's guaranteed to be playing in a team that he knows well. He's in a favoured home environment. He's got Champions League football. Ultimately, there's nothing more other than potentially, on paper, having a greater chance of winning trophies, which is obviously something I'm an advocate for. So I can see why he'd want to move, but at the same time, it's like us in the title-winning season. You have to have a sit down with those players and say, look, give us one more season. We could go even further than this. We've got a good crop of players here. But, in this day and age, heads will be turned. But, that's my version of events.
No, it makes complete sense to me. Ed, what I thought we'd do is have a look at the paper talk that's come out already and assess it on its merit, how likely we think it is it will happen and what value we would want should it come to fruition. So Chilwell has been linked in various papers with both Man City and Chelsea. I mean, do you see that there being interest any more than just anything concrete there?
I think there'll be interest. If he's in form, he's obviously English, which helps with quotas or whatever you want to call it, that you've got to have in your squads in the Prem and in Europe. But to be honest, if Chelsea are the only side in for him, providing we get a European spot, I wouldn't be too concerned. Obviously, irrespective of where we come, if Liverpool or Man City come in for you, I think it's going to be extremely hard to get your head turned. Not to get your head turned. I think similarly for Man U, but other than that, if providing we get a top 6 or even a top 4, teams like Arsenal, Chelsea and Spurs, who would traditionally be seen as perhaps losing our better players to, sort of grown in confidence throughout the season that we shouldn't be too concerned about them, providing we keep up what we're doing now.
Yeah, so online with the bookies at the moment, Chelsea are 20-1, Man City are 5-4, but staying at Leicester is 8-11. So it's obviously the bookies think that he's not going anywhere in January. But Chris, should he actually decide, yeah, I need to go? How much do you think the club? What price tag are you slapping on him if you're in charge?
It's impossible. You got to judge it by what previous transfers are at. So Harry Maguire, what was that in the end? Like 80, 90 million?
Yeah, 85-ish.
It's going to have to be at least that for me. And again, like a fullback or a wing back, whatever you want to call them. It's one of the most sort of fashionable positions to be playing in now. And I'm not saying that should directly dictate a cost, but ultimately it's a position that should fit 90% of modern teams. So for that, I'm going to go 90 mil plus, because it's a premium position that, 10 years ago wasn't. It was a Gary Neville type position or Phil Neville type position. So now, kids will be growing up wanting to play there, and I'm saying that's dictating the prices, and it's 90 mil plus for me.
Are you saying that no kids grew up wanting to be Gary Neville?
I think you'd struggle to find one.
I think you're probably right with who have we got as backup. Christian Fuchs likely to only have a season left, and Luke Thomas is developing, but he's definitely not there yet. So yeah, they would be well within their rights to ask for 90 odd million. So the other link that the papers have been busy stirring up, and Sky Sports have been all too keen to get involved with, is James Maddison, who has been strongly linked to Man United over the past couple of windows, but this one seems to be gathering some pace. Ed, what do you make of that one? Is it something that we need to be worried about?
I'm more concerned about this than Chilwell to Chelsea. From what I read, and I don't know how true this is, but he is apparently a boyhood Man U fan. As we know, with the crazy money they offered Maguire, they'll be giving him a treble his wages, something ridiculous like that. Obvious the stature of the club, however poorly they're playing at the minute, it's a draw, which is concerning. But I guess, look, if we're going to achieve what we want to achieve, we've got to accept that these players are going to be linked with other clubs. So I don't think we should be too disheartened by this, and it's more so a sign of our progress rather than anything else.
And there's an optimistic slant on this, which I'm quite enjoying. But Chris, if he's top chance creator in Europe last season, young lad, doing it again and developing, getting better every week, I mean, it's got to be. Are you talking three figures in the millions, or what would you want for him?
Again, it's a desirable position, even more so than a wing back. It has to be 100 mil for me. I guess it's just an example I thought in my head. It's like having an attractive girlfriend or boyfriend. Like, ultimately people are going to be looking at them like sort of window shopping. Like, it's something you got to deal with as a man or a woman. Like, there's no point getting like scared about it. If he's going to stay, he's going to stay. If not, then you can get a good fee for him. So, best of luck to you, son.
Don't sell your girlfriend, though. No matter what fee that is offered.
So, the bastion of journalistic accuracy, the Mirror, has reported that Man City are interested in not one of our defenders, but two, in that they want both Soyoncu and Johnny Evans.
Chris called this a few weeks ago, didn't he? Or was it last week?
Oh,
that was Shock Horror Sky Sports, actually.
Well, two channels picking it up. But I mean, Pep has bid for Johnny Evans during his time at West Brom, several times, in fact. So you could see it. But Chris, I suppose take each one separately. But do you see a club like Man City coming in for either Evans or Soyuncu, or both?
I mean, the first thing I said again when this did come up, and we always sort of discuss these things, is Evans just isn't a Pep signing for a few reasons. Namely his age, which would make it a bizarre signing. In my opinion, and secondly, Pep's all about developing players. I'm not sure how much more you can sort of get out of Johnny Evans in terms of it's probably too late to change his style of play. He's confident with the ball at his feet, but he just doesn't strike me as a Pep sort of player. I don't know why papers pick these sort of stories up and run with them. I can definitely see Soyuncu being his type of player, for the reasons I've just mentioned, Evans not being them. And again, in terms of how scared I am, I do see there being a serious bid coming in for him. But again, it's whether or not we can demand 80 mil for Soyuncu, probably not. So, that would be around the 60 plus mark for me if we're going to have to band a fee with it. But I just definitely don't see Evans being a move. I think I'd go as far as saying Man City fans or the board that wouldn't impress them. That is not a signing they want. I'm not saying they're like Real Madrid levels, but they want glamour signings. Johnny Evans is not that. I rate him as a player, but I don't see him going to Man City. No.
No, I mean that suits us really, doesn't it? If they do decide that he's not the headline signing they were after. But Ed, is that something that you agree with, especially about the values placed on the players?
I was going to say, if you want to have a debate, we'll have one. I feel that opposite, because it's a January window, based on their issues in defence, I wouldn't be, and they know they're going to get Laporte back originally. I wouldn't be surprised if they saw Evans as a solid hand who can play in an attacking side, who they might be able to get for a relatively cheap fee during this window because of his age.
And do you think Evans is at a stage in his career where he knows he's going to play second fiddle to Laporte when he comes back?
I don't think all I'm speaking of now is would they have an interest in him. I could see them, if they were to make a bid for one in January, I think it will be Evans. If they were to make a bid for one next summer, I think it would be Soyoncu. Because I feel not only would Soyuncu cost a lot more, I also think in January you also would have to put a nice premium on that, because as you've said many times before, and rightly so, January transfers, you rarely see big moves, so we'd have to sort somebody out to replace him in a short window of time, which isn't easy. So maybe they see Soyuncu maybe as a long-term thing, but Evans is more of a quick fix for their defensive issues, in their eyes anyway.
I mean, we signed Johnny Evans for the laughably cheap price of $3.5 million in instalments, which is even more ridiculous. What do you think, like you said, with the fact that we are unlikely to be able to sign a replacement on the cheap, what do you think the club would demand for him, bearing in mind his age and stage of his career?
It will be 32 in January, just so people are aware. What can you charge for, even though he's been great, he's probably got 2 seasons in him. If they bid like 20 million, like, I'm picking random numbers, I guess, but that'd be a great deal for a 32-year-old.
Absolutely disagree. That's ridiculous. Just because we're going to get 20 mil that we don't even need, and because of his age, that's a great deal for us losing out one of our key players.
No, I don't
agree. That is absurd.
No, I'd say it was a great deal for a 32-year-old. I don't think we should sell him.
Why? But you can't say it's a great deal and then say we shouldn't sell him. It's one or the other. It's not. It's just clear. How is it a great deal for you then, as a fan?
Well, I could go to a.
Who's going to step in for him for the rest of the season then?
Well, we'd have to buy someone, but
I
said I wouldn't sell him.
But you said it was a great deal.
Yeah, I've seen deals in shops before and not purchased them.
Awful example. Why is Johnny Evans leaving for 20 million and leaving such a great deal?
I didn't say you would. I said selling someone who's got 2 years left on his contract.
For a club that needs money, is a great deal. A club fighting relegation, it's a great deal. We're a club who's meant to be showing ambition. Selling to ultimately...
I didn't say we should sell him.
But you're saying it's a great deal?
Yes.
And I'm asking why it's a great deal.
Because he's not got much longer at the top.
And would that leave us in a good position for the rest of the season when we're chasing European football? Or is that a good deal from a business point of view?
From a business point of view?
Yes. What position was that leaves in for the rest of the season?
I don't know. I said we shouldn't sell him.
So it's not a great deal then, is it?
From a business point of view?
Yeah, but from a business point of view, we'd make more money qualifying for the Champions League, with respect to you.
Well, there's 2 different sides to it, isn't there? There's the short term, and then I suppose the long term. I mean, West Brom gambled and turned down those bids for Evans and ended up losing him for a pittance. But I suppose they'd have rather took that chance, I guess. But I think that the club would need 30 million plus to think about it seriously, in my view. But that's my view. Those are the only players that have been linked with leaving the club so far. There's bound to be others thrown up, and I'm sure this isn't the last that we've heard of it. But we asked on Twitter to those that follow us to suggest 3 signings to come in January. One realistic, one ambitious, and one wild card. And we've had a load of suggestions that we'll pick some of the best ones. But we're gonna go through our own as well. And it'd be good to get you guys' opinions on this. So Chris, I guess we'll go through the realistic ones first. Who have you picked out as someone that Leicester can seriously think about targeting in January, and what would they add to the team in your view?
Well, ironically, after just lambasting Ed for selling Johnny Evans, someone not necessarily, well, maybe January actually, I'm not sure. It depends what state of affairs are at Spurs. Toby Alderweireld. Okay, let me justify his case. His contract's running to a close, so it'd be available for free. I'm not sure what the how many months before that, like, negotiations can officially open. So realistically, wouldn't be a January move. It might be like done in January for the summer. So still answering the question. But yeah, basically last summer, if reports are to be believed, no one actually made a formal bid for him, and his release clause was only £25 million. Yes, he's 30 years old. That could be a reason, but for me, still, if we're going to go on Ed's sort of notion of 2 more years at the top, or 3, I think 25 million for a player who's had 41 Champions League appearances, a proven set-piece threat, a leader, I'd snap your arm off at 25 mil, and I'd absolutely rip your arm off for a free transfer.
And I suppose he gives that added depth as well, with Morgan retiring, and also gives you the insurance if one of the others were to leave, right?
Absolutely. I think when I asked this question, I was looking at targets for positions where we're relatively weak from a squad depth point of view. He came up, Premier League experience, Champions League experience, a couple of years left at that level. If we can get him for free, I can't imagine his wages being astronomical at Spurs purely on their wage structure. I think he'd be a good leader to have.
If you want to know about the contracts, as far as I'm aware, if you're a foreign country, you can start doing a deal with him from the 1st of January. I think if you're one in England, it's later in the year, probably around April-ish time. But still, if teams can tap him up, well, it's not even tapping up, but try and sort of deal with him from in about a month's time, whilst I'd argue perhaps he's not in it'd be an ambitious move rather than the realistic. I certainly do think if we wanted to give Europe a bash next season, and we're going to need a bit of rotation in our back line to keep everyone fresh, if there's any chance whatsoever of him wanting to come to Leicester, I think it'd be a great signing.
No, I agree. I think that's a very good suggestion. And would certainly add a lot of depth to the team. And it's the sort of player that we want to be looking at, especially if we do get Champions League. There is more rotation, and it's good to have players of similar quality coming in. You don't always want to rotate and slightly weaken. So that's.
Do you want to know an unreliable wage prediction for him?
Why not?
According to the internet, he's on £80,000 a week.
There you go. You'd take that, wouldn't you?
And give him. You'd probably want a slight rise to Leicester, maybe like a 2-year, 100 grand a week deal, something like that.
So it wouldn't be completely out of our wage structure either.
I'm guessing he's probably on, a lot of Spurs players are on bonus related things, so maybe an extra 20 grand for a clean sheet. So yeah, around the 100k mark is a net wage.
And he's probably one out of Spurs at the moment. So good call. Ed, who have you noted down as your realistic signing?
Not quite as big name as Alderweireld, but again, I spoke about him a few weeks ago. I just went for Jared Bowen, forward/wide man at Hull. last 3 seasons now has just constantly been contributing goals and assists for them. Sort of fits the bill in terms of what we look for in signings. Young, up for it, wants to improve and progress, and we're a bit short on the wings with goal scorers out wide. So, and we're heavily linked last summer as well. So, Jared Bowen for me.
And I mean, do you have any idea the sort of fees that you reckon you're going to have to pay to get him?
Well, recently, the last few years, when you've been trying to sign the top championship players, they've actually been demanding quite a lot. Like Daniel James, for example, wasn't cheap to Man U, was he? Wasn't he something like 20 million or something like that?
Yeah, about 20 million.
So if that's the going rate, well, initial fee of 15 apparently. So I'm guessing something like that for Bowen would be doable.
Okay, which is not exactly blowing the bank for Leicester at the moment. So yeah, good shout. My one, I think it was realistic in terms of hopefully wanting to come to the club, but that was Dwight McNeil from Burnley. He's obviously had this is his second full season in the Premier League, and he had a good season in what was a pretty poor Burnley side last year. 3 goals and 5 assists, and at 18 years old as well. And he started the season really well again this year, 4 assists and a goal in 12 appearances. I think he's that sort of creative player off the wing, where if you are going to be in the Champions League or targeting it, you do need a player who can sort of conjure something, and I think that depth would be really important. So I think that he's a sort of player. The only thing working against us is that he did sign a contract extension in January for 4 years with an option of a further one. But I mean, so did Harry Maguire last year. So that necessarily doesn't mean anything more than other than we're going to have to pay a little bit more. Can't imagine he's on a huge amount at Burnley. I don't think they've got the sort of financial power that we have. So I'd like to think that as a sort of player Leicester look at. Fits profile, young lad, English, would get on well here. It's whether he would want to push himself and go into a stronger squad. Is my view. I don't know if you guys have got any.
I've just done a quick Google, and in the summer, McNeil was linked with moves to, or at least being watched by Spurs, Man U, and Juventus. So I imagine if he does become available, could be a few interested parties. But seem to think, don't you have him in your fantasy team, Chris?
Yeah, I do. It's
maybe you've got all the background knowledge on this guy then.
Well, the way I see it, quite simply, is Burnley play 4-4-2. 2 strikers means crosses. He's a wide man. And he's affordable.
Simple.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I know we're likely to lose a wide man in a traditional sense in Mark ALBRIGHTON in the next couple of years. You never know. So then we had you're allowed to have a little bit more fun with the ambitious signings. So I know the guys that contributed on Twitter definitely did, but we will come to them in a minute. Chris, this is your arena. You do like an ambitious signing. Who have you got written down?
I think this is ambitious, and I think a lot of people might disagree. But I think Thomas Muller, currently at Bayern Munich, of course, he's angling for a move away, I believe, if reports are to be believed again. In terms of his career, I mean, he's 30 years old now. He's one of those players you probably think's a lot older.
Yeah, I definitely did.
329 Bundesliga appearances, 229 goals, 176 assists, 108 Champions League appearances, 100 international appearances, 38 goals for Germany. You know, those stats. And just to back that up, his most common position played is actually right winger. He's not actually played the most times through the middle, so he's versatile. And just to say that he's assisted 176 and scored 229, you'll struggle to find another high-scoring player like that who assists as much as that. And that's why I've chosen him as an ambitious signing. Ambitious, again, for the reasons that, is he thinking of Leicester? Probably not. I don't have a clue what his next plans are, obviously. I don't think there's been much said about it, but I've definitely not seen him been linked with anyone from the Premier League. So, again, it's always one knows that, if you want to come to the Premier League and a Champions League club, if we qualify, comes in for you, age 30, you could still be a good player for us. And just because he is versatile, you can play him behind the striker, as a striker, or out on the right, that is invaluable experience for me.
I mean, yeah, you can't question his experience and what he would bring to Leicester. And I suppose, like you said, he plays on the wing, but likely to be drifting in and sort of popping up all over the place, which would fit in with Rodgers' system. I mean, wages are likely to be a bit of an issue, but he is linked with a host of clubs across Europe at the moment. Probably slightly more reputable than Leicester at this time, but that's why it's ambitious. You never know. Ed, who have you plucked out for yours?
So I've changed mine purely because Chris told me off because it was a boring suggestion. So I'll make it a bit more interesting.
Who was it? Who was your
for the listeners? Yeah, I said Deulofeu originally. I thought he was ambitious because he's one of the star mans. He is one of the star men for a divisional rival.
PhD, by the way. It's unreal.
He's one of the star men for another team in the Premier League, which we've rarely been able to get. He'd cost a lot of money. So, for example, Richarlison, Watford demanded 50 million or whatever for him, and I thought, yeah, we could play him out wide in an attacking role, and he might be able to plug that void. However, a slightly more exciting one, which I appreciate is a little perhaps too ambitious, but that is just a bit of fun, would be Memphis Depay. Currently at Lyon, and as recently as this week been linked with a return to the Premier League with Man U or Spurs. After his time at Man U originally, he's gone back to... he's not gone back. He's moved to France with Lyon, been playing near enough every week and scoring every other game. Can play out wide, scores goals, seasoned pro in what is now a pretty decent Holland national side. And again, we're looking for goals from out wide. Maybe he can be the guy to bring it if he wants to return to a Champions League team in England.
I mean, Chris, any thoughts on that one?
Well, I agree that Depay is a 100% better suggestion for an ambitious move than Deulofeu, purely based on the reasons. Deulofeu, he's really been patchy. The amount of money we'd have to pay for him is quite a lot for a player at the age of 25 who's, in my opinion, still hasn't fully proven that worth. You can't be paying that amount of money for a project. Not for me, not at this stage of his career. Depay, on the other hand, again, one of those players I thought was significantly older than what he is. However, he is a flair player. He brings something, but he also potentially brings a bit of trouble off the pitch. He is one of these sort of playboy types. Whether or not, again, it's boring reasons, whether or not he'd even want to consider a move to sort of Leicester as opposed to like more of a cosmopolitan place. Shock horror, Leicester's not cosmopolitan in my opinion. I don't know. As a footballer, though, if he was wanting Champions League football and to come back to the Premier League, I'd snap him up and I'd be talking significant money for him as well. But it's something that has to be weighed up by the board. But he's definitely a more exciting proposition and a finished product, in my opinion.
I mean, yeah, that's why they're ambitious, I guess. But they are players that would improve us in many other ways. I suppose my ambitious one is strangely a guy who I've actually panned quite a lot on this podcast, making me a massive hypocrite. But it's Wilfried Zaha. Now, the reason why I've always panned him previously is probably more because Palace fans big him up to be the best player outside the top six, and he may well be in his ability, but he's never really done it there. I think he's only ever got 10 goals or more in one season, but I think that is more due to his surroundings more than anything else. He's managed to get, you know the skill set he's got, extremely good with the ball at his feet. And I think he needs to be playing in a side where he's not doing as much defending. Hodgson's made Palace extremely hard to beat and hard to break down, but that's not going to suit a player like Wilfried Zaha, is it? I think we said the same thing about Mahrez when he went to Man City, in that he needs to be in a team on the front foot. Our wingers are very important to how we play, and I think that he's got that ability. And also the fact that he gets fouled however many times. I mean, it's a lot a game. He's fouled on average 3 times a game. Add that into with James Maddison, I think that's potentially a good combination. Maybe, don't know. I think they're going to want a fair bit of money for him, but he's a bit of a statement signing. Maybe would send a message out to the rest of the league: we're not here to play. We're not here to mess around. We want the best players in the league, and he is potentially one of them, in my view. But there you go. I suppose I'm knocking a guy that's got 15. Goal contributions last year. I mean, those are decent numbers, aren't they, as well? So, I don't know. That's the player I'd like to see. So then we also asked people for curveballs. So, I suppose by that we mean ones that you wouldn't necessarily, a bit more outside the box in their suggestions. Chris, I'm sure you've got a good one. Who are you saying?
Okay, right. I've literally I've mentioned him before. It's not something you're expecting. I've not mentioned it in the chat. I'm going to go for
Excited.
Pedro at Chelsea, right? And let me explain. So the question's curveball, right?
Yeah.
Curveball being Chelsea are getting rid of him. I'm not sure. Is that because his contract? I don't even know if is it because his contract's coming to an end. It expires in June 2020. So yes, it is. Again, if we can get him on a free, and his wages aren't astronomical, which they probably are, to be fair. He is a Champions League experienced player. It's not going to cost us anything, so risks are, well, relatively smaller. He is 32, so yeah, again, tail end of his career, potentially, but he's still got that burst of pace. He's still that more direct player. Yes, he's come into criticism. Yes, he needs to be a better player ultimately at the moment. However, let's then think about Brendan Rodgers as a manager. Does he think he can still get something out of Pedro? For me, he's a good shout. He's a good being the operative word here. He's not gonna. He might not wow the fans as a signing, but for me, as a free transfer, I definitely think he ticks the box of curveball because I don't necessarily think, he's that desirable at present. But I do think there's still something left in the aging tank.
I quite like that one. I mean, he's played 9 years or so at Barcelona, and for Spain, he's obviously had something about him. I suppose he almost fits into a similar sort of mold as Thomas Muller, right? In that you're buying him for his experience as well as anything else. Yeah,
and I think unlike Muller, I don't think the elite clubs, if you like, are going to be coming in for Pedro. It's interesting. Yeah, he does strike me as maybe a player who's going to go out to maybe Asia or start winding down his career to chase the Yankee dollar. But if he wants to stick around in the Prem and actually challenge himself one last time, he might not even be a starter. But as an impact player and an experienced player, you're going to struggle to get a better free transfer, in my opinion.
I like it. Good, yeah, good wild card. Cool there. Ed, come on then, let's hear it. Who have you got?
So for my wild card / curveball, I was trying to think of a striker we could have to support Vardy or give him some rotation opportunities, be that in Europe and or cup competitions, someone who's scoring regularly who I don't think would cost a bomb. And I went for someone you may well remember, but Andre Kramaric. Obviously, came to Leicester not too long ago, having rave reviews in his native Croatia. But I feel like it was a case of maybe right player, wrong time, or because he was never been a bad player, and even since he left and has been at Hoffenheim, he's been the worst season he's had. He got 13 goals in 34 games in the Bundesliga. He's proved it that he's a consistent goal scorer, and he's also last season he showed that he can do it in European campaigns as well. He got 5 goals in 6 games for Hoffenheim in Europe. So as a secondary striker, I think we could do a lot worse than considering bringing Kramaric back.
As a question to you, Ed, and I'm doing this, I've not done any research. I didn't actually know you were going to say Kramaric. I know you mentioned him earlier. But why would we pay a fee for Kramaric when we could take another punt on Slimani, who maybe was also the right player at the wrong time?
I don't feel like he would fit the system, like a big man.
Is Kramaric? How would you describe? I'm not saying Kramaric is a big man, by the way. How would you describe Kramaric as a player, though?
Kramaric is 5'10", so evidently not a big man up front. He's just a goal scorer. His record is.
What the fuck? Have you just Googled what is a striker?
No, I'm trying to talk whilst I'm being jumped all over. Someone is showing a lack of respect for the institution that is the podcast.
Have a word, mate.
I'd sell her if I got a good offer. I just feel like bring him back. He scores goals. We need a backup. If he's available at a decent price, maybe it's worth another punt.
Fair enough. That's a good call. I think you're right. He definitely was the right player at the wrong time. The system we were playing didn't really suit him, and it was a shame that we didn't hang on to him for a bit longer. I think he'd be a decent wild card to bring in. My curveball is Chris Smalling. Now, I'm saying this, and I think if I'd have said this a year ago, I'd have been laughed out of the room and off the podcast and off the account. But he's gone out to Italy on loan at Roma to sort of rebuild his career, and has immediately set about doing that. He's played 8 games for them at the moment, and is winning a vast majority of all of his challenges. He's in the Serie A team of the year so far. And he's doing the business over there. He's 29, so he's not exactly hit the twilight of his career. He's obviously getting there, but obviously the place where I'm most worried about our lack of depth is at centre back. I think that in Soyoncu and Evans, we've got 2 brilliant first choice players. Benkovic is still an unknown as far as I'm concerned. Is he good enough or is he fit enough? Time is going to tell about that. And then obviously you've got Wes Morgan, who's been a fantastic servant, but has realistically got another year in him, and he's a backup player. So you need someone with that proven quality, as we've all spoken about.
I think it's again, I'd have literally laughed at you. In fact, I did laugh at you earlier, again, when we were speaking off air. But in terms of thinking, I didn't actually know how well he's performing in Italy, and there's no better country or better league, ultimately, if you're talking defensive stature or historically defensive nature, Serie A. You're going to learn how to be a good defender out there, ultimately, probably in whatever position you play in, because that's the way teams set up out there. So if it's true that he is really, coming on as a player, even at the age he is, it's an interesting shout. But if he is doing that well, would he be leaving or even available? But I guess that's why he is a wild card.
No, that is true. But I think with Man United and their transfer policy, quite literally anything can happen. You never really know what you're going to get with them. So I don't know. I think it'd be out of left field, but weirdly, I could see it happening.
I think you got to remember, not judge players on what they're doing only at their current club. Remember Johnny Evans was laughed at Man U as well, and he went to West Brom and became, I don't know if you wouldn't say a legend there, but like one of their best players in many years, really solid Premier League defender, ended up getting linked with lots of big clubs in the league, and now he's rebuilt his career again. So just because Smalling's never lived up to his potential at Man U doesn't necessarily mean, he's had a fresh start. He's not going to kick on and show everyone what he's capable of somewhere else.
That's it. And I think there's the appeal. I don't know. I think we've got an appeal for a player that wants to prove themselves as well. I think that Leicester are a club on the up who could potentially achieve something. And I don't know. I think we offer an attractive proposition. So as we said, we did put this out to Twitter, and we've had a lot of interaction on it with a lot of people giving some very good suggestions. But we have gone from the sublime to the ridiculous with a couple of them. Everyone, you know who you are. Akin Fenway in particular was one which I doubt they're going to look at. But I think what I thought we'd do is pick out some of the ones that appeared most consistently, and just basically get you guys to sort of sum it up, whether A, you like it, or B, can you see it coming? So, first one, and he appeared most in the realistic signings as well, was Ryan Fraser from Bournemouth. Chris, would you like it, and B, what happened?
I've just exhaled at that. It's interesting because what was it? I think he was linked with Liverpool last week, wasn't he, or this week, whenever? And I messaged saying that's the end of his career, and you said the next Sheridan Shaqiri.
It looks like him as well. Like, he couldn't be more like for like.
Yeah, I mean, he is pretty similar in terms of stature, etc. I don't know. There's just I know that yes, at Bournemouth he's been a good player, but I don't know. Something doesn't fully sit right with him. I think also Bournemouth, rightfully so, probably based on how he's played for him, will demand a fee. And I'm only using Nathan Ake as an example. I think they wanted like 75 mil for him. I think you've got to think about it in proportion. If at the right money, if he's a 30-40 million pound player, we can work with that. But I do think, again, yeah, relatively speaking, if it's an astronomical fee, then no, he's not the right sort of player, especially with no Champions League experience, etc.
Fair enough. Ed, another one who's come up quite often, not in the realistic column, but more of the ambitious, was Ziyech from Ajax. I mean, there's a lot of people that want to see him at Leicester. Is that something that you can agree with?
Yeah, we've had fans calling for us to look at him for the last few years now, haven't we? Odd one, isn't it? Because whilst I'm sure we'd love to sign him, like, where would he even play? I guess, unfortunately, we're not yet at the stage of a club like Man City where they can sort of sign all these amazing midfielders and rotate them in and out and they're all happy. Maybe if Man U came in with £120 million bid for Maddison and he wanted to go and we had to sell him, then that's a great replacement for him. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, yeah, I'd take him, but would we be able to keep everybody happy knowing that at least some of our midfielders will be at best sort of rotation options? It'd also be very expensive. It's been linked with a lot of big clubs around Europe. I imagine there'd be a lot of competition.
Well, yeah, he's not going to be one of those that's going to come cheap. I mean, he's got a highlights reel from the Champions League, hasn't he? And he can score some pretty outrageous goals. So, yeah, it's certainly ambitious. I mean, put it that way.
Let's say we signed him. Like, who would you start him?
Yeah, yes.
If so, who would you drop?
Barnes.
So you play him in more of a wide.
Yeah, I think he'd almost fit the bill as a sort of a Mahrez-esque player. You'd put him on the wing and then just allow him almost a free role, which I think sort of fits in with how our wingers would like to play. As long as he starts wide, I think that would work, in my view.
Oh yeah, if you play him there, I was under the impression, maybe this shows my lack of knowledge about the Dutch league and Moroccan football.
Lest we forget.
I assumed that I thought he was sort of more of a central attacking player.
He's a right winger, really, isn't he? But I guess you can play him on the wrong side and have him chop in.
You know, if you can play on the wing, then obviously
he is a right winger by trade, and he drifts in. But I'm saying even if he's favourable on that right, having a right-sided player on the left is very tricky to compete with. Which I think we're all in agreement that right now he's better than Harvey Barnes. I don't think that's an outlandish statement, obviously. I think it's just pure truth. But in terms of what he's going to be going for, it's he has to be like a 70, 80 million pound player, and Ajax are a shrewd dealing club. They bring players through. I don't think they're going to get mugged around.
No, you're right. I mean, he's played 16 games this season, 6 goals, 11 assists. Most of his starts have come on the right wing. He's also played at the centre midfield, attacking midfield. So he's versatile. But yeah, like you said, that is going to be a big old bid, isn't it? That's going to be a huge statement, especially in January. And also, I like Harvey Barnes, so there is that. The other one has been ambitious. I mean, I'm going to put it in ambitious because I can't see it happening myself. Is Callum Wilson? That's suggested by a number of people. Probably 7 or 8 people have suggested that one. Chris, I'll leave that one with you. What do you reckon?
You've given me 2 Bournemouth players. But I've got different reasons for Callum Wilson. One, he's definitely going to be Bournemouth are going to be demanding, I'm going to say 80 million. He's a striker. That positions have never been more desirable. Strikers have always been high-profile players. But the reason I worry about that is that he is at a stage in his career, or he's meriting starting week in, week out. The reason I just don't see that happening is because Vardy ain't in a position ready to be getting dropped week in, week out. And we're not going to play 2 number 9s. We're not going to change systems. I just don't think it's not realistic more than anything. Moving to Leicester, in my opinion, would be a logical move, especially if you have European football in terms of career progression. But it wouldn't be a logical move for him if he's not guaranteed, 35, as long as he's fit, 35, 38, aka starting every game of the season. I think he merits that.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, the value is going to be, it's going to be monstrous, isn't it? That they're going to want, especially in January.
Well, yeah, the value, yeah, and personally, I don't think he's going to move in January. But if he's going to go to traditionally speaking, if a starting player ever leaves his club, it is to coin a phrase, a big club. We're not one of these big elite clubs. I can see him going somewhere like Man United, and historically, again, if he's of the belief that they're going to return to the big club they are, or a big team, then yeah, he'd probably be happy sitting on the bench every couple of weeks there and proving his worth. But I don't, with all due respect to Leicester, as a Leicester fan, obviously, I don't think he's willing to take that step down in the short term to be a bench warmer or a potential bench warmer at Leicester City.
No, I mean, I can't find anywhere even offering odds on him moving from Bournemouth at all, let alone to Leicester. Incidentally, we are second favourite to sign Ryan Fraser, by the way, behind Liverpool, which is, means absolutely nothing. So another player that has been suggested, which I'm going to ask your opinion on purely because I'd like to see it just for the reaction on social media, is Odsonne Edouard from Celtic. So formerly of Toulouse. I mean, what do you reckon to that? He's a striker, and I believe he's a fairly young lad, but has played a majority of his career at Celtic. So what do you think?
Go on, Ed. If I say anything, I'm realistically.
No, I'm having to wiki. I'm having to wiki him because I've not looked that far down the footballing pyramid in a while.
I think. While Sed's doing that, just to summarise my point, it's going to be fee-wise achievable because Celtic historically have never sold players for astronomical fees, and that answers itself. However, In terms of it, he's scoring goals in Europe. He's scoring goals, obviously domestically. You'd put him probably in the pile of he's got potential. So for that reason, you'd look at him. But for me, if we're going to get some player from Scotland, I'd just go in on Morelos. To be honest, get that, play him, have him as a wild card. Edouard, I think, for the amount Celtic will want for him, is not someone I'd be looking at.
Right now, I would argue, picking up on a point Chris said when discussing issues with Iheanacho and him not playing, I'd argue if we are to sign a striker, I don't see much value in signing one that's a young player who could progress and then just playing him a few times a season, because he's not going to progress as well as he could if we do that. So what's the value in signing this young guy from Celtic, playing him, starting him 5 times a season, bringing him off the bench 5 times in the league, and then that's it? And then you expect him to take over from Vardy in 2 or 3 years' time. I feel like someone who you can rely upon, who right, Vardy's injured for 2 weeks. I'm not going to have to bring on a kid who's got potential, who's hardly ever played at the highest level before. I feel a more seasoned hand may be more a better decision than that.
It is a tricky one because obviously I'm almost arguing against myself though, because I've just said we can't sign someone like Wilson.
Well, when I say, I mean somebody who may have peaked already, or who is at the peak, whereas I think Wilson would still say he's got more room to progress.
Yeah, true. I guess it does fall into that awkward category of like, well, age-wise, I'm guessing you're thinking of someone who's 28, 32. There's a ballpark.
Kramaric, my example was, although he is only a year and a bit older than Wilson, I imagine Wilson probably thinks he's got a higher ceiling than Kramaric. And I don't know, the move from a Premier League starting place to a Premier League bench ain't as appealing, where maybe Kramaric could see a move from the Bundesliga to the Premier League, even though he's more of a rotation option, is still a step up.
I just think with Kramaric, he's been burnt once. I think anyone advising him about his next move will be very wary of that, knowing that we've got a godlike figure in terms of football in arena and Jamie Vardy. I think we're really going to struggle to attract players because of Jamie Vardy. So it's sort of like shooting ourselves in the foot, like a double-edged sword, really, because we've got this player we idolise right now, but at the same time, he's almost blocking a good signing coming in, because it's that balance you got to strike and that conversation you got to have with both the player coming in and Vardy that we have to plan for the future. And I do worry that this is a position Leicester City are going to get caught out at when it comes that Vardy does just slow down, because we're going to then have to just pay big money to find an instant replacement if we're not willing to look at a contingency player.
Well, yeah, I mean, you'd have thought that they're trying to long-term plan with a younger player, but it hasn't worked out at the moment. Alfredo Morelos is a player that we are linked with, but I'm not sure about him, especially his temperament. He gets sent off more often than he scores goals, so I don't know about that one. But
I mean, and I know we're stuck for time here, but the Morelos one, whether or not we could persuade him to come as a bit part player, the less time he has on pitch, the less time he has to get sent off, and that can work. No. On a serious note, that's something that can be worked on in terms of his temperament. And he strikes me as a player who's got fire in his belly, and he really wants to prove a point to be. He is an icon at Rangers right now, and he could be an icon at Leicester City. And he just strikes me as that sort of player in the nicest possible way. His ego is big, and yes, if channeled in the right way, he could be an absolute player at this level. But yeah, I get the obvious reasons that he's a danger.
Yeah, there's a risk element, but I mean, it'd be entertaining, wouldn't it? I mean, that he's definitely got that side to him. I mean, there were a lot of other suggestions that we won't go through. They range from Gareth Bale to Timo Werner, and everyone in between. So thank you to everyone who engaged on that with us. The player I was going to mention, by the way, was Ben White, who's currently on loan. I didn't realise he was on loan. I thought Leeds owned him, but he's young centre back, absolutely tearing it up for Leeds. They absolutely love him. I asked a Leeds friend what if they'd like to keep him, and he said, I would sell our entire team apart from Calvin Phillips just to sign the guy. Not that it's not like Leeds fans to get overexcited by anyone, but I think he's a good young player that I'd like to see us go for in the summer, but he didn't quite fit with our January window plans. So just on a final point, something to note about on Mark Albrighton's now turns 30, 30th birthday today. One of a lot of Leicester fans' favourite players, always gives 100% and scored some crucial goals as well. His contract expires in a couple of years, but at the age of 30, not getting as many games at the moment, having to set up a bit part role. Chris, I mean, it's sad to say, but do you think that his time at the club is perhaps limited now?
In all honesty, I've said this about two other players in this podcast. I thought he was so much older than 30. So in answer to your question, I was sort of mentally preparing myself in the least emotional possible way. That he was sort of at the end of his career, like a Wes Morgan sort of player. Like he's clearly been phased out. But the frustrating thing is that it's more that maybe he's not Rodgers' type of player, but ultimately, I'm not sure on the exact stats and not even on direct assists, but when he comes on, he still causes a bit of trouble as that traditional wide man. I've said before, he's not, like, I wouldn't class him as a winger. I'd class him as, sort of a David Beckham-esque type wide man. Players you don't really find that often anymore, but he's just so practical. Getting him on the ball, he's going to cut in, he's going to deliver him an absolute, class delivery 9 times out of 10. But in the modern game, he's like, no disrespect to him, but honestly, if he moved on to somewhere like Burnley, he could still play in the Premier League and he'd get a lot of games. Like, and that's me saying that in a nice possible way in respect to him as a player. Like, he deserves to be playing week in, week out, and it's just a shame to see him not necessarily fit our system anymore.
Yeah, I mean, do you think it is more that he is that traditional wide man, Ed, that is purely his style of play, or do you think that Rodgers is actively trying to plan for the future and bring players through?
Well, I think when you spend as much money as you have on Perez, then he's automatically going to be like first choice, especially now he's started performing. So then you've only got one more attacking midfielder / winger, whatever you want to call him, place up for grabs. Damari Gray's been doing it off the bench recently. Harvey Barnes seems to have the starting point place for now. So, well, he's at best fourth choice, isn't he? And given that's the starting point of where we're judging these players and the fact he's considerably older than the others, then it is starting to sort of slow down. Like, I didn't realise he did only just sign a new contract in January, though he has got another 2 years left on it, at which point it'll be 32. Almost certain he won't be signing another contract, and to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if he's gone before the summer of 2022.
I mean, that's quite a long time to be fair. I'd go as far as saying I wouldn't be surprised if he's gone by the start of the first game next season.
That's no disrespect meant, I'm sure, from either of us either. It's just if we're going for this young, attacking, pacey side, then obviously, whilst he offers a lot, and Chris says he can offer a lot for another team, he doesn't really fit the mould right now of where this team's going. Perhaps if we do get into Europe, though, next season, he may bag another year with us. The fact is, he's been to Europe before, he's performed for us there, he knows what it's all about. Maybe another voice in the changing room, similar to the Morgan role, where he hardly plays, but he's a Leicester guy. He's a Leicester man. Was there through the good times, been all experienced, and now he's just shepherding through the next lot of young players. So, but yeah, certainly his end is. I feel like the end of him as a first team regular may have already begun.
I mean, you can tell by the sort of social media loving that's happened today with all the players. The sort of, I know it's a silly thing, but the respect they got for him and how popular he is within the squad. So you're right. I think his influence will be off the pitch is something that they'll miss greatly as well, which I'm sure they'll take into consideration. It's just what he wants to do in the latter stages of his career. There's no doubt for me that he's still good enough to be a part of the squad at the moment. I think he's got enough to at least see out the year with us. And I think maybe as the season goes on, and maybe when we're not flying quite as well as we are, he might play a bit more. When you've got to graft a bit and sort of pull through games, that might be where he comes in. But time will tell on that. I think that at the end of the season, we'll know a lot more about that, won't we? Now, of course, I was about to wrap the podcast up, but very quickly, somehow managed to forget that Leicester are actually playing this weekend. The international break has sucked all the domestic football knowledge out of me. But Leicester travel to Brighton, a team who, on paper, immediately you'd say, well, we've got that one, haven't we, from last season? But they are an improved prospect this season, sitting 11th in the table, and they are pretty good at home, having only lost once. Two of all teams, Southampton, but they've only lost once. They've won 3 and they've drawn twice. Very quickly, I guess we ought to get predictions. Feel free to expand upon them if you want, Chris. But how do you see this game going, and where do you think the scoreline is going to end up?
Just a bit of background. Their last 3 home games, beaten Norwich 2-0, Everton 3-2, Tottenham 3-0. So they're not shy in coming forward, it seems. For me, I'm basically ignoring recent form, especially off the back of an international break. I think if there's any momentum, the bad thing about international breaks is that it does get broken. I do see a Leicester City victory, and I see a Leicester City victory 2-0. The scoreline being 2-0. I think we need to just carry on. Again, I've just said momentum's lost, but in terms of technical ability, stuff like that isn't lost. If we play a game we've been playing all season, be patient. I don't think we're going to go all guns blazing. It probably maybe even 0-0 at half time, but 2-0 by full time, and a nice little victory to get us back on our way into the festive period.
Certainly hope so. Ed, what do you see? How do you see this game going?
I can't remember last time we did a scores prediction and Chris didn't pick the score I was going to pick just before me.
You can go first next week.
Well, thank you. That's awesome. But it's no use now. I also think we'll win 2-0. Simply put, I think we're the better team. They have been doing mixed results. Home form's been very decent. Away form has been useless. It is at their place, but irrespective of that, with a better team, we'll win 2-0, and I can't pick 2-0, but I think we'll score more than 1, so 3-0 it is.
3-0. Those are 2 very, very optimistic scores, as always, which we like. I think they're going well under Potter. I think he's a good manager, and I like this. I like what he's doing there, and he's getting the best out of what is quite an average squad, I guess, when you look at it on paper. But having said that, Leicester, hopefully we do carry a bit of momentum through. We should be winning this game. You'd like to think so. I'll give you 2-0. I think if
Can't do that.
I can.
You can't. We've all got to have different scores.
Oh, behave. Right, okay. I'll give you 1-0. But basically, I think that if we score the first goal, it's coming to us. They struggle to equalise, and I think that'll be what we do. So it's important for us to start well. So I'll give you 1-0. And I'm going to give you a Harvey Barnes goal because I always predict it, and one of these days it's going to happen. He gets into good positions enough. It's going to happen this week. So, as always, I'll ask. It has been a bit of a bumper episode. I'm not sure what the runtime is, but is there anything else you want to add in, lads?
No, it's been a thoroughly enjoyable one. And, if do you reckon, just as a quick one, do you think we'd actually end up signing any single player we've actually spoken about?
Absolutely. not.
Yeah, I can't see any of them
I
personally.
don't think we'll sign a player.
I
No
think
business.
I think we will try and personally. Yeah, that's a good point actually. I think we will try and shut up the shop. I think the club will be more focused on keeping their players rather than splashing out the cash. Personally,
I agree with that. Yeah.
Which
In January, obviously, summer's a different ballpark, but yeah, January, 100% agree.
which I would take as a successful window. Actually, instantly, we've spoken about the best part of probably 20 players, and what we're essentially saying is we don't want to sign anyone. Which is kind of disheartening if you listen to all of that. So sorry about that. If you made it through to the end, we've just wasted your time. No, thank you very much for everyone who listens and all the feedback, as always. And please join us next week. Hopefully, we are talking about some spot-on predictions. See you then.